True wealth is where your being gets to walk through the world and perceive everything, know everything, be everything, and receive everything. If you do that, your money situation will change dynamically. The people who have true wealth, one of their fundamental characteristics is when they receive something different or new, they let their box expand. If we did that in every area of life, we would have a wealth of being and a wealth of living that most people can't even fathom. And if you've been trying to change the money thing for a while, is it possible the way you've been trying to go about it isn't what's required? What if there's something totally different available and possible now? Wealth is already yours. True wealth is the willingness to receive everything with no point of view. That looks a lot different than what most people think. And so within that, then you get to choose your own adventure. But wealth is a lot more than money. True wealth is a willingness to receive anything with no point of view. And so people have thought wealth is about money, but I know a lot of people with a lot of money who have very little personal wealth. Wealth is actually a function of your being, it's not a function of your bank account. It really kind of probably makes your head go for a minute. But if you're willing to, because you have a choice. See, I can say something, and if it doesn't match your box of reality, then you can just reject it or take what I'm saying and compress it into your box. Or you could consider the possibility that what I'm inviting you to do is expand your box so that your box of reality gets larger after this conversation. And the people who have true wealth, one of their fundamental characteristics is when they receive something different or new, they let their box expand. If we did that in every area of life, we would have a wealth of being and a wealth of living that most people can't even fathom. Take any billionaire you can think of. About 99% of them would never expand their box of reality. Why? Because they have what this reality says is the answer. They have the money that is the solution. And I'm really inviting you all to a different perspective that makes it not about the money. Because there's a secret about money. It's never about the money. The more you're willing to receive, the more money can show up too, because if you're an open book and an open door, everything can come in. And then all you have to do is be willing to have money too. Just write down one thing you're grateful for and add at least one thing to it every single day, or maybe three. Okay. One thing, one person, and one thing you're grateful for about you. So one in each category. I'll be in an upset with someone or something. And when I choose gratitude, it melts it all. So what happens in an upset is some projection or expectation or point of view is not being met, or some fixed point of view that you have is being projected at you, and that button is being pushed. And receiving is having no buttons to push. Like true receiving, if somebody, true receiving is this. We think receiving is aligning and agreeing. Aligning and agreeing is when you make something real. And when you make something real, you've now made it real. So true receiving is not what we thought. So I'll give you an example. Somebody goes, "Oh my God, you're such a jerk." Well, true receiving is letting the energy come in and go through wherever it needs to go. You don't have any walls or barriers to it, meaning you don't have to prove you're not a jerk. You don't have to prove you are a jerk. You don't have to align and agree and go, "Oh my God, that must be true." You don't have to resist and react and go, "Oh my God, that's not true." You just go, "Oh, okay. Thank you very much." That's receiving. The other is something that we call acceptance, which is positive or negative polarity. So if somebody goes, "You're a jerk," and you're doing the positive polarity, that's when you're aligning and agreeing with that point of view. You're basically in your world going, "Oh, that must be true because they're saying it." And then if you ever find yourself resisting or reacting or fighting against something, it's because you've already made it real and true, because if you hadn't, there wouldn't be anything to resist. The choice you have when somebody goes, you're a jerk, is to either receive it or reject it. If you reject it, you're not only rejecting that, but you're rejecting money from your life. You're rejecting happiness, you're rejecting love, because the universe doesn't, when you go into rejection, you reject everything, which is weird because we keep trying to judge the things to reject and the things to accept. But if you're doing rejection or resistance to something, the only way you can do that is by rejecting everything. Because you're in that rejection mode, true wealth is not rejecting anything or anyone for any reason. Okay. True wealth is where your being gets to walk through the world and perceive everything, know everything, be everything, and receive everything. If you do that, your money situation will change dynamically. Because as Gary Douglas told me 25 years ago, there's no such thing as a money problem. There's only a problem with what you're willing to receive. So if you're willing to receive the things that push your buttons without having your buttons pushed, you will eventually get over having buttons to push. When you no longer have any buttons to push, money is simply a matter of ask and you shall receive. And wealth is already yours. We think that the answer to whatever problem we have is going to and should make sense. But that's not receiving. Receiving is I will receive whatever information you have and see where it lands in my world. I'll see what part of it contributes and what doesn't. And I'll actually expand my box. I realized if I had a problem with anyone or anything, it was a button that I had that was being pushed. If I'm upset about anything, I am going to change it. Now I'm going to change it because that's the way I would like to live. I would like to have nothing upset me ever again. And I've had things that some people would be like, how do you even still keep breathing? How do you survive? It's so stressful. I'm like, yeah, it is to you, and it used to be to me too. We think to ourselves, well, if they would just change this, if they would just contribute to the kitchen work, if they would just, stop spending this, if they would just stop doing this, then I wouldn't have these problems in my world. No, once you get over your problems, they're going to stop doing the thing that pisses you off. And even if they do it, it's not going to be upsetting to you. So what I did is I went, okay, if I got a problem here, I'm going to look at it. And if any of you know Gary, one of his greatest capacities is to push your buttons. And if you choose to take it as a gift and be grateful for it, then you can go, wow, if he's able to get me to go into reaction, I must have a button. But what most people do is if I'm going into reaction, you did it, it's your fault, you're wrong. Why am I so upset? I hate that you keep making me this upset. And I tried that game for a long time too until I realized it wasn't any fun. I wasn't having the wealth of my being in those situations. And so what happened is the next upset that came up, I went, okay, because I realized I was told something a long time ago when I started Access Consciousness. And it was if you have a judgment of something, it's because you've been there and done it. But the truth is, you're actually judging you. So anyway, I realized I wasn't enjoying life in these areas. And so one thing came up where he was like, he did his thing. He was just being Gary. And I just came unglued in my own world because I won't overtly get upset at most people because my whole life I've known it probably isn't about them, but I didn't know what to do. So I got invertly upset and twisted like we do a lot of
Mm.
times and had this sort of separation and resentment. And then I went, okay.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm gonna pock and pod where I was that, meaning undo where I was that. Because I have that choice. What if every single thing that comes up that pushes your buttons is a gift to get you to more awareness? You got to choose it. But what if everything that currently creates an upset is a venue and a vehicle for more awareness? And what if more awareness is synonymous with more consciousness? And what if more consciousness is the way to access the wealth of your being? It is. That's why this consciousness thing is so amazing. And if we had a world of people who truly were being them and had the had that the wealth of their being was a gift, how different would the world be? I had this upset and I went, okay, everywhere I've done that and been that, I now destroy and uncreate it, pock and pod. And then a new awareness came into my world. Where am I still doing that right now that I'm not acknowledging? And I went, okay, everything that is, destroy and uncreate it, pock and pod. Holy shitballs, Batman. The missing element for me was that if you have that much charge, you don't have that much charge about something, that much upset, that much anger, that much resistance. If you're not actively doing it somewhere in your world and not acknowledging it, it doesn't occur randomly. These things that upset us don't occur randomly. So I did that, and all of a sudden I got this lightness, whereas before it felt like my entire world was filled with all these sort of like black holes, you know, and broken glass. And all of a sudden they just went, and I was like, whoa. And I thought of Gary for a moment. I'm like, wow, I just have total gratitude for him. Wait a minute. But it can shift that fast. That's one of the beautiful things about access is it can shift that fast. Now, a lot of people watching, we created a live about wealth, and a lot of people are like, yeah, but show me how to make money. I am. Because it's not about making money, it's about no longer rejecting receiving money. And every upset you allow yourself to stay in is a rejection of receiving. And the universe and you don't know how to reject specific energies. The only thing you can do is put up an energetic wall and barrier to keep it all out. You can also then ask to receive more money. And then here's the other weird part is when it's no longer about money is the source and it's no longer about I have all these upsets that money will solve, then you can see what your actual points of view are about money. And if any of those are limiting you, then you can actually see them for what they are. As long as you're blaming money as the source of your problems, you're rejecting the money you could receive. But money is never a source of your problem. It's your points of view around money and your points of view around receiving and your points of view about money and other things where you're rejecting receiving. Right now, in this, you are getting a free masterclass on receiving and money and wealth. And are there many other topics? Yes. But this one, mm, is so
Mhm.
big, and we haven't been able to address it this way before, which is one of the things I'm excited about. There's another element of wealth is actually when you realize you're the one calling the shots, when you're the one choosing to create your life, living, and future. And if we had allowance, we had happiness, and we had being an adult of consciousness, uh, how much easier would everything get? How much more true wealth would you have, and how much more money would you have with these? A lot of people with a lot of money who have very little wealth.
Mhm.
I also know a lot of people with very little money who have a lot of fucking wealth. And those people, it's like I desire to emulate and be more like. And it's not about the money. Some of you would really like a lot more money. Well, guess what? I would like you to have a lot more money too if you would like it. The only way it's not going to work very well for you as a humanoid is if you're making that the source and making that the source of solving your problems, because these problems are not what we think they are. They're a misidentification, misapplication, and they're a place where we are not allowing ourselves to access the potency, the depth, and the wealth of our being. And if you've been trying to change the money thing for a while, is it possible the way you've been trying to go about it isn't what's required? What if there's something totally different available and possible now?